Everyone wants to leave a legacy of positivity in the world around them. Whether you are a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, a nonprofit executive director, or even a soon-to-be entrepreneur, one fact is always true. The easiest and most effective way to catalyze change in the world around you is through commerce and through business. But how do you do it? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Changemakers Collective, a place where people can come and get educated and encouraged and empowered to be the impact agent in the world around them. Brought to you by Silverback Ventures, Steph Thomas and Scott Woods have over 50 years combined experience helping companies and owners amplify the voice and multiply the impact of purpose-driven businesses. Join us each week as we discuss what it means to live a life of purpose on purpose.
Welcome back to the Changemakers Collective. I'm Scott. This is Steph. We are so glad that you've chosen to hang out with us for our podcast today. One of the things that we get asked all the time and get told all the time when we ask the question to entrepreneurs that have an existing business, future entrepreneurs, nonprofits, what is the one thing they always ask us or always tell us that makes us both want to scream?
That they need more money.
They need more money. If you're a nonprofit, I just need more money. If you're a for-profit, well, if our sales were up, we could do X, Y, Z. And if you're a wannabe entrepreneur, well, what is holding you back from starting your business? Well, I just need money.
Mm-hmm. Or even if you have a nonprofit and you were holding on to your W-2 job because you need more money for your nonprofit. It's no matter where you are.
I've got a side hustle. Well, why aren't you starting your business and actually taking it to the next level? Well, I just need more money.
Mm-hmm. Although we all need more money.
You don't need more money. Hear me when I say
you don't
99 times out of 100, you don't need more money.
Scott, one time you were
ranting and raving about this.
Well, no,
because I do rant and rave about this in particular.
Seriously, you were talking about on a personal level that you were transitioning jobs,
mm-hmm.
and you and your family realized that you needed a whole lot less money than what you were currently living on.
Yeah, that's true.
And sometimes that's the conversation that we have with people. Like, if you had to do this with $0, what could you actually do? Mm-hmm. So some of I need more money is just a mindset.
Oh, yeah. And some people will assume, let's talk about the transition from a W-2 employee to a entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. Which is scary in itself.
Yeah, it's terrifying, but exciting and super rewarding if you do it well.
That was the word I was looking for, rewarding.
But they look at, hey, my company is paying me $75,000 a year, or let's make it 100 just to make it easy math. They're paying me $100,000 a year, so I immediately have to have $100,000 a year in income in order to make an easy transition over. Well, what they're failing to recognize is that $100,000 in salary doesn't equal $100,000 in your pocket.
Right.
So once we have that conversation, you can recognize the fact that, you can live on a lot less than you think you can just from a salary to business ownership income standpoint.
And people forget that your time is important, right? So if you are spending 40 hours, and we'll just pretend like it's only 40 hours at your W-2 job, then when do you have time to work on your business?
Yeah, that's a scary jumping off point.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had conversation around that before. The transition, the moment that you say, I'm going to stop working my full-time job and start focusing 100% on my business, that moment in time is terrifying.
Okay, but that leads us to our famous question that we ask people,
mm-hmm.
which is,
if I gave you
$10 million,
how would it change your business? And I think that transition, let me go back for just 1 second, because that question is foundational in what we want to talk about. But for those of you who are interested in starting your own business and you've got it as a side hustle today, and you're scared to death about jumping off the ledge and going, I'm quitting my job and moving to my full-time business, let me just give you a piece of encouragement that if you've done the heavy lifting up front, if you've gotten with the right advisors, if you've built a foundation that your product or service is unique in the marketplace or has a unique place in the market.
If it's an actual business, not a hobby.
Yes. And part of that is understanding what success looks like. It goes back to our commentary nonstop about having a vision for what success looks like. What problem are you trying to solve? If you've done that work, I would say to you, as someone who's been through it 3 times, the sooner you start, the better.
Right.
And it is going to be excruciatingly scary. But what I will also say is somebody who, the first time I started my business, tried to hold on to my W-2 as long as humanly possible. What I found, and what I think you'll find, that stunts your ability to start your business in a positive way, because you're holding on to, well, if this doesn't work, I can fall back on my
B.
If it's always your plan B, it will never be your plan A.
Right.
So just take the leap. And if you're terrified, hit us up. We will work with you to make sure it's successful. Now, for those of you who have an existing business or a nonprofit, and all you say to us is, I can't grow unless I have more money.
And if we give you the 10 million, you cannot pay yourself more money, and you cannot hire more people with it. What else would you do with the money?
And you know where that comes from? Being in conversations in my previous job as a CFO on how do we raise capital? How do you go to an investor and raise money? And one of the things the investors will always say, and rightfully so, how do I get my money back? What is my return on this investment? And early stage companies that don't really understand what they're going to do with the money will say, well, I've been bootstrapping this for years and I'm going to pay myself back so I can do this and I can do that. And the investor is thinking to himself, well,
I'm giving my money to pay
I am
you.
literally just taking money out of my pocket and putting it in your pocket, and the business is no different.
First of all, when you are asking people for money, for those that are listening, that is the last thing you want to put on your proposal, is that you are using their money
for staff salaries.
You just don't do it. However, you can have programs that that person is funding.
This is secret information.
Secret information.
Secret information.
If someone is funding your program, you may have to hire staff for that, but they are funding the program.
You have to draw a direct line from $1 invested to $1 worth of impact.
Yes.
Everybody knows you can't just manufacture cash. If I gave you $10 million and you were, let's say, a nonprofit, let's make it easy. If I gave a nonprofit $10 million, they're going to, in order to increase their impact, multiply their impact, they're going to have to do more programs.
Right.
Well, in order to do more programs, you have to have people to execute those programs. Right. But as an investor or as an institutional donor, I want to know about the programs. Able to know about the programs and the end result of those programs. So when you are talking about how to grow your business, whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit is irrelevant. When you're talking about how you grow your business and you're talking about investment in your business, you have to start thinking like and talking like an investor. What am I getting out? What's the end result of this money coming in the door? And we meet with hundreds and hundreds of people that will say, if I gave you that $10 million, how would your business impact more people? Or how would your business multiply? And you'd be amazed at how many people go,
no, true story.
Yeah.
Right. So, Brian, again, from Rock Hill Coffee, was with us, and he was talking about his startup and that he sat down with his mom and dad and he needed $2,500. And I was sitting here thinking, okay, a parent invests in you as a person.
Yes.
His investors invested in equipment,
Yes.
in programs, in product,
Mm-hmm.
not in him as a person. He
Oh, no.
sold the
No,
product.
when he and I sat down and said, hey, we're going to do this thing, I said to him, you need to talk to me as if you didn't know me. And we need to be talking about how that investment is going to change your business and increase your ability to make money. It's the same way for all companies in growth mode or in survival mode. You have to be able to, and I think it's not only from a presentation standpoint to the potential investor, but from an operational and from an institutional standpoint as the company, if your default, and forgive me, my nonprofit client friend or nonprofit friends, you need to get out of the survival mindset.
Right.
And you need to get into growth mindset and say, if you handed me a check for $10 million, I need to be able to immediately say, $10 million equates to this many people's lives being changed because of the programs we do.
First of all, we talk about elevator pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Elevator pitch is not a 60-minute dissertation.
Mm-mm.
Like, you need to be able to hook people fast about your product. But the mindset, again, it's a mindset. If I had $10 million and I was a nonprofit who impacted the world, what products, placement, avenues would I use the $10 million? Because if you're chasing your dream and not the dollars will eventually
Come on, Steph.
get in your
Let's
pocket.
go.
Woo!
Quoting me on the thing. If you chase after impact, the dollars will find you. I think what I immediately thought when you started saying that was you should be thinking about that already.
Absolutely. Well, that's your first love, right?
Yeah,
you
right.
created the the problem's there. You saw it as a problem and you started chasing the problem.
The best, well, I should say not best, the most successful entrepreneurs have a clear vision of what success looks like, and they can see 45 different ways of getting
But
there.
Scott, that's the problem.
No, hang on. Because I agree with you.
Right.
You have to have boundaries around how you get to that vision. But when you have the conversation around, hey, I need more money, those that are most successful will have an immediate answer as to, if I had another $10, I know that this avenue that we have not explored because it doesn't align with our current mission, vision, and values is an opportunity I want to explore because it could be successful to help us get closer.
Right.
And I think what happens generally in the smaller business circles is you're stuck in this, I don't know if, like kind of the living paycheck to paycheck mentality. And I don't know how or when I can afford to think bigger. We're here to tell you, you need to do that work on the front end. So when the money does come in, you immediately know how to allocate it and use it to execute to get you closer to your vision.
Yeah, it's wisdom.
But that only starts and is only possible with clarity around where you're going and what problem you're trying to solve. Without clear vision, you cannot create avenues for future revenue and future impact.
Scott, I mean, a lot of times when people call us in, that's and they say we need money, that's really the conversations we start having, right? Okay, let's map it out. Let's talk about your vision. Let's talk about your strategy. Because what's the question
we ask them? The minute they say they need money, we say, what are you going to use it for?
Right.
And if the fumbling answer is, man, I'm just sucking wind. I need to pay my bills. I need to do this. I need to do this personally. The conversation just kind of stalls.
Right.
Because we're like, well,
that's why we added the layer of you can't pay yourself with it and you can't add more staff.
And
what are you doing?
Hear us. We are under no circumstances saying that an entrepreneur should not pay themselves.
Oh, well. You should absolutely
because that's
pay yourself.
Another downside risk, right? The downside risk of being that, hey, I'm going to defer my salary. I'm going to invest in my business and I'm going to go forward and not take any money and not take any money and not take any money and not take any money. you get a false sense of how well the business is doing if you're not paying yourself.
Well, then
if you're saying, "Hey,
hard.
I get done my first year and I've got $20,000 that I got in the bank."
Well, you don't have
you
that
didn't
'cause
pay, you didn't pay yourself anything.
Right.
You're in the hole by $30, $40, $50,000.
100,000.
Yeah, whatever
right.
the case may be. You have got to, at least in your mind and have on a piece of paper, this is what a success looks like from a financial standpoint, just as much as from a vision casting standpoint.
So that's the second question that we ask, right? So what would you do with the $10 million? They stumble around. And that's not one company, that's universal. I mean, people start asking for help because their business
desperate.
Right. Okay. When you change,
and that's an okay place to
right,
be. But it's not an okay.
You can't stay there.
You cannot stay there.
Right.
Yeah, we've said all along, ignorance is okay unless you plan on and stay where you are.
Right. So the next question that we ask is, what does success? Paint me a picture of what success for you would look like.
And that's way harder. That's way harder than people would think.
Right.
Because we have a tendency as human beings to only see through the lens of the next 3 feet or the next 10 feet or the next 6 months. It's very hard in our mind's eye to say, I see myself as a gazillionaire and my business, because it's very hard to say I'm starting as a solopreneur and I can envision having 45 locations with 5,000 employees, and we're making $25 million a year.
So, Scott, we were joking earlier about one of the people that we were talking to did the vision map, but that's a real thing, right? So somewhere along the way, sometimes people get off, and we call that when we are doing a Mount Everest initiative, one of our programs.
Yep. Prepping for Everest.
There you go. We talk about how mission creep and how people get out of line, and then the money is not there the way they want to. And, okay, what does success look like? Well, they can't articulate that. And there's a whole program that you can go through to really map it out. Vision map is one of the big ways, but just a strategic plan will help you get to where you need to go again.
It's not an insurmountable problem. And I think where companies go sideways is they haven't spent enough time on the front end to really understand on a high level what problem they're going to solve. And I think so many businesses start from hey, I happen to be good at X, Y, and Z, and people may want to pay me for X, Y, and Z.
I don't know. I would challenge you on that. This is why.
Tell me.
I think that most people say, this is a problem in our community. And
I would like to think it's that way, but how many people have we run into said, hey, I like baking cakes, and I'm now going to have a cake baking company.
Well, yeah, okay, well, there's that.
They haven't thought at all about how they're going to get flour and eggs that are now $15 a dozen.
And that's kind of where I was going, right?
Yep.
So it's my experience. Most people are like, well, I saw that this was happening in the community and I wanted to help it. And this was my background and I knew it worked well with this and I could do it. So I started doing it. Well, what was your plan? What was that's great to have a big idea. And it's great that you are in tune with your community, that you want to solve that problem. But what was your ABC before you got to Z?
Yeah, I mean, we can reference back to the other podcast where we talked about the hows and whys to start a business, about problem solving being the key. The key, to your point, if you're not solving a problem, then very frequently you're not having a business. You have a hobby that some people are willing to pay you for.
Let's use Amy for an example.
Sure.
So for those that don't know, Scott's wife loves tea. She's a tea guru. She
is a tea.
She has probably read all the tea stuff that you could read, but she also is an excellent baker. And she spent a lot of time really focusing in on, we got to try all the biscuits.
Yep. Scones
Delicious.
and tea sandwiches. When you think of The Crown, the show The Crown, and the high tea, that's my wife. She does that kind of stuff.
Displays
in
it
addition
beautiful.
to being a engineer and a director of finance and all the other things.
And an all-around smart woman.
Yeah.
Shameless plug for Amy. Okay. However,
her face is already turning red right now.
she was having these tea parties and it was great.
Yep.
And you, being entrepreneur minded, was like, let's do this. And what happened immediately?
Yeah, we immediately found that there, one, wasn't a hole we were trying to fill. And two, we couldn't make it work, couldn't make the math work in the time frame that we wanted to have. And I say that meaning, in order for it to be financially viable based on our product costs and the rental of the space and all of those things, we would have had to have worked 4 or 5 teas every single day, 7 days a week. And neither one of us was in a position or had a desire to do that. Counting the cost is extraordinarily important. Now, if you had said to us, and I think this is where you were going, and it's super interesting. If you had said to us, Scott and Amy, if I gave you $10 million today, how would that change your mindset? It wouldn't have changed it at all.
Right.
We still would have said, this is not, one, it's not solving a problem.
Right.
And two, no matter how much money you give us, it's still a crazy amount of work that we don't necessarily have the desire to do right now.
Well, and here's the third of that. It went from being something fun, entertaining, and great to, oh my goodness, this would be a job and I would hate this.
Yeah. I don't want to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning making, blueberry scones.
Right. So just because it's a good idea.
And it's fun.
And you have the $10 million.
Yep.
Right. But if you get the $10 million, then if it sits in the bank and draws interest, well, you don't have a good plan either.
Yeah. It's funny when we have that $10 million conversation, because most people will be like, I'd take a trip around the world and I'd buy this and I'd buy that and I'd buy that.
That's not even that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Someone said, well, I'd give myself a vacation. I've worked for 4 years. No.
Yeah.
It's just no.
Well, and I think it's not
okay.
Well, it's not okay, but it's not bad either. Right. I mean, and I want to say that for the benefit of those people who are listening, who are dabbling, have a side hustle, have a side hustle, do your side hustle, but your side hustle isn't necessarily the next generation of what you're doing for the rest of your life.
And it's okay to own your own business and have a vacation. I literally just said to a client today, when have you built in self-care?
Yeah.
So we're not shaming people that need to take time off. We encourage
No, and I think
off.
that's the point, right? I think the point of, hey, if you're in growth mode in your business and you came to us and said, I need $10 million or I need money to grow my business, our response would always be, how are you going to use the money? And if we gave you 10x of what you're asking for, how would that additional investment transform your business so you can impact more people? If you are not in that space yet and you have a hobby on the side or you have a side hustle, that's not applicable to you. We're not saying everybody should be an entrepreneur. We personally believe, and it took a long time for you to jump off that ledge into that world, because it is scary. And not everybody wants to do that. And that's totally fine. What we're saying to you is, as you're growing your business, you have to have a clear definition of what success looks like. What is your vision when you get to that top of Mount Everest and you say, I can retire now because I've accomplished everything I've wanted to accomplish. I've impacted all the people I want to impact. What is that?
Yeah.
And then we go backwards. One of the great things about that book, Vision Map by Joel Malm, I think is his name.
That's right.
One of the things, you walk backwards down the mountain. Instead of looking at the bottom, you're standing at the bottom of Mount Everest and looking up and saying, there's no way, it's impossible. When you're standing on the top and looking back down, you go, oh, I know this from personal experience. I have not climbed Mount Everest, but I've done some crazy hikes that it seemed impossible when you started. But when you got to the end, you were like, after you took a breath, you were like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I can do that again.
Mm-hmm.
if you have a clear vision of what that destination is, then you back down the mountain to say, okay, what do I have to do tomorrow?
Right.
What's the one thing that I have to do tomorrow to get closer to my vision? Now that I know where I'm going, I know what my core values are, so I know what's keeping me on the mountain, and I know the pathway, what my mission objectives are to get to the top. If you can articulate those three things, you have the ability to have a very successful business. If you do not know those three things, shameless plug, you need to call us. Click on the link in the show notes. We will walk you through the Prepping for Everest intensive, where we help you articulate that. We help you define it, both from a leadership standpoint all the way down to everybody on your staff. And I can guarantee you, you go through that process, you will be more energized and more ready to tackle the task of growing your business than you have ever been before.
Absolutely.
And is that bragging or arrogant in some kind of way? It may sound like, but that is not true. We have never not gone through that exercise where we didn't have people go, oh my gosh, I am so fired up about where we're going with our business, because we've done that exercise for us.
People come from a defeated stand, right? Yeah. And then we do it and they're like, oh, because we're the outsider looking
You need some third-party clarity and third-party Sherpas, to use the
Mount
Everest. Analogy, to help guide you up that mountain. So please take a moment, check out the website, check out the link in the show notes. We are so excited to walk with you through this process and to be with you and to cheerlead you as you get to your Everest moment. Man, that is the highlight of what we get to do. So until next time, live a life of purpose, on purpose, and conquer your mountain. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Changemakers Collective. If you've enjoyed this episode, please help us grow our community by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or rating us on Spotify.
You can also find our podcast on YouTube, so you can come and leave us a comment over there as well. If you want support growing your business and scaling your vision, visit us at silverbackventures.org or connect with us on LinkedIn.
Thanks again, and we'll see you on our next episode.